I guess that's my place in the world right now, is thinking about how do we take ethical care of our land and of our animals and produce nutrient dense food and climate beneficial food and fiber.
In this episode, we get acquainted with the National Center for Appropriate Technology's new Regenerative Grazing Specialist, Linda Poole. From her early days on horseback at her family's Eastern Washington ranch, to working for the Nature Conservancy and managing its 60,000-acre Matador Grassbank in Montana, to raising sheep on her own homestead in Malta, Montana, Linda has developed a wealth of experience that will be a great asset for NCAT's sustainable agriculture resources. Linda's NCAT colleague, the other Linda, Linda Coffey of NCAT's Arkansas office, welcomes her new co-worker. They talk about the work Linda will be doing for NCAT, as well as her perspectives on adaptive grazing management, learning from mistakes, and the resilience in natural systems. Let's listen.
This is Linda Coffey from NCAT Southeast, and I am honored and thrilled to have this chance today to introduce all of you to the new Linda in town. We have recently added Linda Poole to our team. Poole is spelled P-O-O-L-E. Linda Poole raises sheep, and she's going to talk some more about that. While I am the Linda in Arkansas, Linda Poole is in Montana, and I have joked with her that I don't want her to be called the new Linda because that makes me the old Linda, and I'd rather we say Arkansas Linda, Montana Linda, if you all don't mind. So Linda, thank you for joining our team, and I'd like you to introduce yourself to our listeners and tell them about where you came from and some of the work that you've done up to this point. Then we'll talk about what you are doing for NCAT and your future plans for NCAT. So thank you.
Oh, great. Thank you, Linda. I'm so excited to be here. And I wish I could see all the people that that will listen to this at some point to engage with the ATRA and the NCAT clients, because y'all are making a huge difference in the world. And I'm so excited to maybe be able to be part of helping with that. I've had kind of a circuitous route to how I got here. I grew up horseback on a ranch in Eastern Washington, kind of in the middle of nowhere, and a shy kid who always loved animals and the outdoors, and realized that if there was a way to nurture nature, that's what I wanted to do with my life. And so at first I thought I'd be a veterinarian to do that. And then I realized, no, it'd probably be better to be a wildlife biologist and do that type of work. And so I did for decades. I worked for the Nature Conservancy and managed a 30,000 acre ranch in Oregon, where we were integrating cattle with waterfowl production. And then here in Montana, I helped start the Matador Ranch Grassbank project on a 60,000 acre ranch that created the opportunity for dozens of ranch families to be able to invigorate their ranch operations at home, and at the same time bring back populations of rare and endangered wildlife like black-footed ferrets and sage grouse. And so that was very satisfying work. I'm happy to have done that, but there's always been a place in my heart for the smaller operations, the family farms and ranches, and people who want to do the right thing and don't always have the resources to do it. And I kind of fall in the same category. I have a 320 acre place, which if I was there with you in Arkansas, it'd be a big place, I would guess, Linda, but it's a pinprick out here. It's just enough land to run 100 ewes on. And then in good years, I pasture cattle too, but my business is sheep and taking care of this place and bringing together the sheep as tools to restore a degraded historic homestead, to have them be my family. They all have names. Every one of them has a name and a history. and to also be the business, to be able to run a profitable business so that I can keep this place afloat. And I think that's where I connect with the ATRA clients, is just, I think we're all trying to do this, and the way to do it better is to talk with one another and learn from one another.
Oh, awesome. Oh yeah, I'm blown away by the scale of operations that you've been involved with. When you say 60,000 acres, I kind of can't even comprehend. So I'm glad that you have that heart for the small producer like myself and for others who are listening, and that you bring all of these life experiences along with you to NCAT. So excited to have you. Tell just a little bit more about what kind of sheep you have for the listeners who are interested in sheep, which I always assume is everyone, but
Yeah, I assume the same thing. I just, I grew up with horses and cattle, and I always wanted sheep. They're such a wonderful, I'm not, I'm preaching to the choir here, but they are just right
yeah.
for people with smaller acreages, don't want to have as much infrastructure. We could go on about that forever, but I didn't know quite what type of sheep to raise here. I wasn't like you. I'm so envious of you, where you have a native site adapted sheep like the Gulf Coast natives. We don't have those here. This is fine wool country, Targhee and Rambouillet usually. I tried 11 or 12 different breeds, trying to come up with just what I wanted, because I'm pretty demanding. I want tight flocking sheep, because there's a lot of predators here. I wanted at least a 200% lamb crop, not too much more, but not any less. I wanted fine wool, so 17 to 21 micron. I wanted a 4-inch staple length, and I like color. And my sister calls me an eco freak. I have a gray water system, so I like color, but I can't dye stuff without impacting the water so much that I can't use it in my gray water. So I'm using genetics to get the colors in my sheep, just like I'm using genetics to get the wool that I want and the parasite resistance and the flocking. So I have this weird crossbred sheep that's mostly Dooney Merino, Ile-de-France, and Bond Corriedale at this point in time.
Awesome. Awesome. So how are you marketing your fiber?
It's changed over time. I was gone for a couple years. Before that, when I was really focused on it, my white, I have a line of white commercial wool that kind of tops the market through the wool pool or through direct sales to the center of the nation, which is a wool buyer in Billings and North Dakota. So with kind of like the common line of wool, that's where I go. But with the colored sheep, I tried a lot of different things. I'm very grateful to Western Sare. I got a grant to do a little study. I called it Making the Most of Fine Fleece. And I tried all sorts of different ways of marketing fleece and making money with my sheep. And what I demonstrated was a lot of ways not to do it.
We learn from mistakes, and so does, and you know what? If you've got that published out there, everyone else can learn from them too. So thank you for doing that.
Yeah, well, and I feel like I learn more from my own mistakes and from the mistakes of others. Mistakes are more easily transferable than things that actually work in a lot of cases. Things that actually work it's such a blend of the context, the setting, the time, what else is going on. Things that go wrong, sometimes somebody could just look at it who had more experience and go, oh, I don't think I'd try that.
Right.
Yeah. So anyway, what I found is that with my natural colored sheep, what works best for me is to sell the wool as close as I can to the back of the sheep. And so coating my sheep and then taking the fleeces, the very best part of the fleeces, to the state fair or to fiber festivals and making direct sales there. Instead of getting $1 or $2 a pound, being able to get $20 or $30 a pound for the 6 pounds of fleece that's underneath that sheep coat. But I've tried lots of different things. And if somebody's listening and is curious and want to see all the things that didn't work, look up Western Sayre making the most of fine fleece, and you'll see all of my bumbling things.
We can provide that link in the show notes. Thanks for that tip. Well, you've talked about where you came from on the ranch in Eastern Washington and some of the conservation related work that you did and grazing management. So tell me some of your thoughts about where we're going with grazing management and regenerative grazing, and whatever term you choose to use.
Yeah, and that's really, I guess that's my place in the world right now, is thinking about how do we take ethical care of our land and of our animals and produce nutrient dense food and climate beneficial food and fiber. And so, that's why I'm so excited. My new title is Regenerative Grazing Specialist. And so that's really what I get to work on. And I get to work across the whole nation with a wonderful team of people. Justin Morris was just hired to work on that. Nina Prater has been part of that for years. There's just so many people working on that. But I'm hoping that what my part of this can be is, I've spent most of my time in arid systems, especially on rangelands that in addition to the food and fiber, provide essential wildlife habitat. And they are the core. And I think this is true everywhere, but I know it's definitely true in the places where I've lived, is the way that these working wildlands, the important role of them is for wildlife, but also for these communities. And the communities are essential for our future and being able to be resilient and strong and the good people that we need to be to build the future that we want for kids that are coming after us. And so I love talking about cows. I love talking about sheep. I love crawling around on my hands and knees and looking at monitoring. I'm excited to help people think about other grazing plans, ways to monitor it. It is so essential that we all interact around the idea of adaptive management and adaptive grazing. There's a lot of controversy in the grazing world right now about, are you doing management intensive grazing or adaptive multi-paddock grazing? What letters do you use? And I just don't go there. I think what really matters is matching the particular circumstance that somebody's in with a grazing plan that can work based on their finances, on the time that they have, their physical capabilities, their animals, their goals, all those things, but being very keyed into the fact that whatever you do, even if you get it right for one day, it's going to change. And so you have to have ways to monitor and adapt and grow together. And, that's what I'm hoping I'll be able to do with NCAT over time, is to develop some relationships with people and let's see how things go along through time. I mean, I love watching that on my own place here,
Right.
But how satisfying would it be to, you showed me pictures of your place and I can't wait to go see it in reality. And what can I learn from what you're doing that will help me with what I do?
I love the way you think, Linda, and what you said about the communities. That's not just true in the arid rangelands. That's true all over our country. We need the people. We need our systems to support the people and to keep the people on the land and keep them healthy, keep them and the land healthy. It all works together. So thank you for sharing that. You kind of alluded to your work at NCAT. Can you talk just a little bit about the work you're doing currently and what you have planned for the next year, since we've been working on that?
Yeah, well, I'm so excited about the work in front of me that it's like hard to take time off to sleep or lamb or anything, because the work that NCAT does is just, it's like I'm like a kid in a candy store thinking about working on the ATRA part of this, being able to produce some blogs, some podcasts, maybe a few videos, talking with people who have been my heroes and mentors and leaders in some of this work. I know a lot of us were at the Soil Health Innovations Conference and listened to Fred Provenza talk. And Fred is a friend and just a tremendous mentor to me. And I'd like to share some of his perspectives on bigger issues. He tells us about all these little things, but just a conversation like this with Fred, that'd be great. So I'm excited about that. Janet McNally, a wonderful shepherd from Michigan, who's really got backed into soil health and to a stronger financial situation and to all these wonderful things because she was about to be wiped out by wolves and barber pole worm. And I just love that story, being able to tell the story of how adversity turns the corner for us if we have the right support and everything. Anyway, I'm excited about being able to tell some of those stories. I'm really excited about the Soil for Water program that we have. A tremendous way to look at the challenges in front of us. So dealing with the changes that we have in water availability or flooding. I know you guys have too much water sometimes. We almost never have enough. And even when we get the right amount, it's not in the right season, or when we release it, it's not in the right condition that we want to give it back to the next user. And so the idea of using regenerative grazing and other practices to restore soil health and have that build our water cycles back into something that's more healthy. So part of that is working on a new kind of a multifunctional internet thing, atlas of regenerative ranches and farms, and the idea of story maps, telling the stories of the people all over the US who have had these transformative changes. Some of us know the big stories. It is so inspiring to hear what Gabe Brown has done with his place. But what about Gabe's neighbors or some of these other people, and I know lots of these people from spending too many decades doing this stuff already. And I want other people to get to meet them, and I'll get to do that as part of what we're doing. And then also getting to help with this groundswell of state soil health coalitions that are starting to move. Colorado, New Mexico, Montana, South Dakota, North Dakota, and I know there's some really great ones back east too. New York has a really fascinating approach to this, and it's something that's happening all over. And so I'm excited about getting to work with Colorado and Montana in particular, because I lived in Colorado for 3 years and Montana for 22 years. But it's very exciting to be able to blend talking to people, helping them with questions that they bring, and then rolling that up into developing networks and hubs and ways to help connect the people, peer-to-peer learning, so that what we are is we're a bridge, we're a translator, and people can connect to that. And then going to the next level and starting to think about, are there ways that we can work with state and federal governments as well as our local people, carrying the messages up. And, if this could happen back here. And just trying to be the bridge to regenerative practices in a kind of a hopefully somewhat invisible way. It's not my job, and it's a good thing because I couldn't do it. It's not my job to be the scientist, and it's not my job to be the policy person. It's my job to help understand what those people are doing and what people around them need, and how to
Mhm.
bring it in a way that makes a difference on the ground.
And taking your love for nature and for people and for communities and bringing that all together. Yeah, I'm so excited, Linda, to have you here. And I would invite any of you who are doing regenerative practices and would like to share your story, please reach out to Linda Poole. Her email is lindap@ncat.org, lindap@ncat.org, and we'll have links to her bio, so some more information, and her email and the report she mentioned, and the Soil for Water website. So thank you, Linda. I'm so pleased that you've brought your energy and your caring and your knowledge and experience to our team to help us at NCAT. And I'm also pleased that you and I can talk sheep and birds and other things. And it's just a joy to work with you. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Linda. And thank you, NCAT. I'm just so excited about this work.
Linda Poole and Linda Coffey's conversation continued after the episode. We recorded more of their conversation, which picks up here. Linda Poole shares her thoughts on grazing to encourage wildlife and managing in the face of extreme drought.
That's a question I'd like to ask. How do we go about really integrating regenerative grazing with improving wildlife habitat for native species?
Yeah.
And where do we gain ground and where do we lose it, and how do we integrate it? It might be that part of this is developing a mosaic. It might be that part of this is making sure that we change practices in both space and time. Not do the same thing every place every year.
I was going to say, you're reminding me of a question I asked Jim Garish recently about biodiversity. How do we improve biodiversity on our farm? And the word he came back with was chaos. Do not do the same thing. And I love that. It's like, yeah, I can remember that. So
here's the cool thing about that story. So there's a couple in Alberta, Canada, Steve and Amber Kenyon, that all through the winter had Wednesday evening, these really cool sessions, and they had all sorts of guest speakers. Were you on any of those? Did you see those?
I didn't know about that.
Oh, they were wonderful. And Jim Garish was one of the people who was on there. And so they were talking about this thing because he's the MIG guy, management intensive grazing. And so they were talking about different names and types of grazing. And somewhere somebody came up and they said, well, that sounds something, I can't remember how it came up, but they said chaos grazing. And Jim said, well, I don't think that term has ever been used. And I'm not speaking up, but I'm typing in the chat box. And I said, well, the one place I've heard it is when Jeff Mosley, who is our state range specialist in Montana, came out to the Matador Ranch when I was managing it. He looked at what we were doing and he spent 2 days out there just walking around on our hands and knees, digging holes, clipping plants, looking at cows, anyway. And we sat down beside Little Warm Creek, which is there's only 3 perennial streams run through the whole place. And all 3 of them run through the Matador Ranch. So we're sitting on the banks of Little Warm Creek. And I said, so what's the verdict? And he said, I can only call it chaos. And I was like, oh, because I thought he was liking it. And I said, could you say more? And he said, well, there is no name for what you're doing. He says, if I had to give it a name, I'd call it the chaos grazing system.
Oh, that's funny. But he did like it, right?
And I said, it's going to be hard to explain to my bosses what the state range person says I'm creating chaos. And he said, no, he said, it's perfect. And it's the only way to do what you're doing, because you are dealing with a mix of species, wildlife species, because it's all about wildlife, you're dealing with a suite of species, some that are migratory, some that are stationary, some that are early successional, some like sage grouse that have critical life stages that are very early successional. With their chicks, they like milky forbs, and milky forbs, where I live, are like dandelion and salsify. Those are early successional. You could even call them invader species that tend to mostly be along the side of graded roads or on cow paths or in overgrazed places that are kind of mesic, kind of a little bit wetter. And yet at other stages of their life, they need a lot of residual vegetation for nesting, and then they need healthy sagebrush for overwintering. And so he said, what you're doing with the grazing is absolutely essential, is you have to have a lot of stochasticity and you have to have a lot of variety in what you're doing.
Hey,
And
hang on, excuse me. What is stochasticity? What is that?
randomness.
Randomness. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's like planned randomness.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm having some planned randomness out here right now with my place because it's a horrible drought and the grasshoppers are going crazy. And so for somebody who's been managing for 12 or 13 years to build my soil health and leave residual behind, and looking at what's going on, there will be nothing left standing when they're done here.
I'm so
this
sorry.
year.
So sorry.
You know, I saw it in Oregon one time when I was managing the Matador Ranch, and it's a different situation when you got 30,000 acres and 1,200 cows that you're feeding. But we had a horrible grasshopper year, and a lot of the cows went to Nevada because there just wasn't feed left. And I looked at it and it was just heartbreaking because all that was left were the midribs of the grasses. The grasshoppers ate all the leaves. And so you'd look out and it was like tiny little skeletons of grass, and that's all that was left. And I thought, this is going to be the end of the world. And I crawled around on my hands and knees because that's what I always do. And I got to looking, and the ground was covered in what I came to call the grasshopper power pellets. It's grasshopper poop. And it is the most amazing fertilizer I have ever seen, because it is almost immediately incorporated as soon as there's any type of a rainfall event, any type of moisture, even if there's just fog, that the ground can eat that back up. And the next year that there was rain, it was as if somebody had gone out there with absolutely premier fertilizer mix that you could ever have. And the plants were better than ever. The diversity was higher because some plants can't handle that. Other plants that had kind of been stagnant were kind of reinvigorated. It was great. So that's what I just keep telling myself when I look out here and think, I'm going to have to wean all my lambs early. I'm going to cull deep in my ewes, and it's going to be painful, but someday it is going to rain and there are going to be grasshopper power pellets out there and the grass will come back.
Linda, I love that you have that past experience of seeing how, the phoenix rises from the ashes or something, and that that you are going to have to do some hard stuff, but that it can come back. It's resilient. Thank you for sharing that. That's wonderful. Well, I hope the drought doesn't last much longer, and it will make your flock stronger when you cull deep.
That's exactly it.
It really will. So so hang in there.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that, Linda. That's so powerful.
Yeah, and chaos grazing is a good thing.
Yeah. Thank you, Jim Garish. If you ever should hear this,
Yeah.
Right.
Well, it's the message in all of this is there is not a recipe. There is not a cookbook that you go to that says this is how to graze your land to have the optimal outcomes. Right. We have to engage our brains. We have to engage our networks. We have to make sure that we keep our eyes open and that we're observing what's going on and what the alternatives are, and that we plan and replan And that's how we get better. And at the same time, that's how we create a community. I love it that we have the internet. I love it that I can be talking to you about what goes on in Arkansas and learn things that way. And when I look out and I think, oh, look at this drought-stricken place, and I just hate the idea that I'm going to be selling 20% of the ewes, so that the land is in good shape. But to have your smiling face and, remember it'll turn around again and good things will come. Your flock will be stronger, Linda.
Yeah. Yeah.
Says Linda.
It will.
Linda from Arkansas says to Linda from Montana.
As opposed to the old Linda tells the new Linda. All right. Hey, thank you, Linda. And hey, good luck with your sheep. Lambing is done, I suppose.
I have one holdout, and
Still?
if she
That was last week. We talked about that. She's still
she must have bred on the absolute last 10 seconds that the rams were in.
Well, all right. So, hey, thank you so much for your time today. Thanks for talking. And I just really appreciate you and the way you think and the way you communicate, and having you as part of our team. I'm just thrilled. So thank you, Linda.
You're so kind. And
Bye.
I'm thrilled too. Thanks, Linda.
Bye.
Bye.
Talk to you later.
That's it for this episode. Thanks for listening. Additional information about this episode and related resources can be found at atra.ncat.org. Don't miss an episode. Subscribe to Voices from the Field wherever you get your podcasts. I'm your host, Rich Myers. ATRA, Voices from the Field, is produced by the National Center for Appropriate Technology, headquartered in Butte, Montana. It's supported by the USDA Rural Business Cooperative Service as part of NCAT's ATRA Sustainable Agriculture Program. Any opinions, findings, conclusions, or recommendations expressed in this recording are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of the USDA or NCAT. We'll catch you again next week, and until then, keep on farming.